Hello, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Everybody in the back can too? Excellent, thank you. My name is Andrew Zawacki. I'm faculty in the English department. On behalf of my colleagues in the department and in its creative writing program, I'd like to welcome everyone here for tonight's Diann Blakely Visiting Poets event. This is the concluding event in what has been no small series of events for our guest who's been here since Sunday night or Monday morning, I think. Before I bring Nick Moore from the Creative Writing Program up to introduce tonight's guest, I would like to say a little something about the Diann Blakely Fund and about Diann Blakely so you know what the sort of context and occasion is for this series that we have running. There's an archive up at the University of Georgia website now, which I'm quoting from here. It's very short, but I mention it because it's a new aspect to this, so now there's a kind of official record of what this is about and who she was. Harriet Diann Blakely was born in Birmingham, Alabama in 1957 and remained a daughter of the South throughout her life. She was an American poet, essayist, editor, and critic. She taught at Belmont University, Harvard, Vanderbilt, the Watkins Art Institute, and served as the first poet in residence at the Harpeth Hall School in Nashville, Tennessee. A Robert Frost Fellow at Breadloaf, she was also a Dakin Williams Fellow at the Sewanee Writers Conference. She won 2 Pushcart Prizes and has been anthologized in numerous volumes, including Best American Poetry 2003. She was a recipient of the Alice Faye DiCastagnola Award from the Poetry Society of America and won the 7th Annual Publication Prize from Elixir Press. There's a list of her books here, which I'll let you look at yourselves. The covers, 2 of them were published by the University of Georgia Press, and then Elixir Press published a 3rd one, and she had a new and selected poems as well. About the Diann Blakely Visiting Poet Fund. In her last will and testament, it was her wish that the executive of her estate should give a portion of her remaining property to, quote, a university to establish an annual poetry publication prize, which our guest tonight will be judging for us in the spring. In addition to the Poetry Prize, the fund provides financial support to host the Diann Blakely Visiting Poet each year, raising the level of interest in poetry on campus and in the wider community of Athens through a variety of events. And finally, the fund supports the creation of this online archive of not only her work, but of the work of the poets who we've had coming. Without further ado, I will invite Nick Moore to come up and introduce our guest.
Welcome. Thanks for coming out for this reading. I don't know what you're talking about, Andrew. I don't feel tall.
Would you like me to shrink it?
No, this is great. I'll just read a little bit about the sort of entry point that I had to Karla Kelsey's work this last week as I sort of dove in, and then I'll read a formal bio and get to the reading that we've all been looking forward to. Of Karla Kelsey's debut collection of poetry, Knowledge Forms the Aviary, 2005 Sawtooth Poetry Prize judge Carolyn Forché wrote, "This is a poetry that resists possession of world by mind with all that this implies for the dominions of power. It is a poetry that refuses the cumulative acquisition of experience, but rather thinks toward and through our knowing the beyond and between. Not only what is, but what is apparently not. The pages that follow see an overlaying of texture, image, and sound, Kelsey painting an impressionism of multi-hued knowing, capturing through adjusted f-stops and onto-epistemology that shrugs the isolated empirical for a more critical look at the assemblages of knowing that occupy our bodies, that interrogate the difference between having and possessing. 20 years on, Kelsey's lyrical, pedagogical, and collaborative works continue to exsanguinate this cerebral thread of being. An acknowledgement of these multiplicities embedded in Clutch and Paper Theater, a piece for conjunctions, in which she and Nancy Cole assert that we are never solely ourselves, are never more pervasive and singular than the moon. And yet, they continue, this the spiders know, and the cherries, their reflection, the glass with its imperceptible dripping. Kelsey's poetry is epistemology on the ground. In her poem, Valley of Glass, also appearing in conjunctions, she engages a politics situated in a modernity beyond the binary of utopia and dystopia, reckons with proposed visions of the idyllic built upon ruin. She re-enters a quiet of thought, following the interrupting and unsettling vantage point of someone watching from behind the world fly toward its future. In this quiet is a prediction. Not until much later, the philosopher says, when I visit the elder home, will we understand what it means to have seen the last of the deer. Through Karla Kelsey's poetry and scholarship, one can embody the singular voice made by a cacophony of many. And through said embodiment, one can see the impossibility of that singularity. Back in the aviary, the captured birds are less caged than they are arranged. Back in the aviary, we sit in these chairs, bolted to the ground, patch of dirt and yellow, snow lilies, of inner rhythm shown on the screens. We add orange to them, then stripes, then the paler shades of blue, constructed this way, of edges, of small crosses and clouds. We are pinned to the hill, the night bridgeless against sky. And without further ado, Karla Kelsey's poetry books include On Certainty, Omnidawn 2023, Blood Feather from Tupelo Press, a Conjoined Book, also Omnidawn, Iteration Nets, and Knowledge Forms, the Aviary, selected by Carolyn Forché for the Sawtooth Poetry Prize. Her book of experimental essays, Of Sphere, was selected by Karla Harryman for the 2016 Essay Press Prize and was published in 2017. She is the editor of Lost Writings, 2 novels by Mina Loy. Her poet's novel, Transcendental Factory, for Mina Loy, was recently released from Winter Editions. Poems and prose have been published by such journals as Bomb, Fence, Conjunctions, New American Writing, the Boston Review, Verse, and Tupelo Quarterly. Her critical essays on poetry, poetics, and pedagogy have appeared in anthologies and literary journals. From 2010 to 2017, she edited Constant Critic, Fence Book's online journal of poetry reviews. She currently co-publishes with Aaron McCullough Split Level Texts, a press specializing in hybrid genre projects. With Pupe Misagi, she edited the first volume of Matters of Feminist Practice, a journal of feminist criticism published by Belladonna Collaborative. An HD Fellow at Yale University's Beinecke Library, and the recipient of a Fulbright Scholars Grant. She has taught in Budapest, Hungary, and is Professor of Creative Writing at Susquehanna University. Please warmly and enthusiastically welcome Karla Kelsey.
Thank you so much, Nick. I feel like I saw my life pass before my eyes, and you made it so beautiful. I really appreciate it. Yeah. I appreciate all of you. This has been so wonderful to be here, and I'm so thrilled and impressed with the thought that's going on. Talking to students throughout the last couple of days has been wonderful, and the faculty here is, for me, a dream combination of some of the best experimental poets, writers, and minds in 21st century America, really, and also a phenomenally brilliant and expansive Mina Loy scholar, Susan Rosenbaum. So I've been in heaven here, along with genius students. A couple of formal thank yous. Jamie, thank you so much for all your organization. It's just been fantastic. I really appreciate the hospitality and the attention to detail. Leanne, thank you for inviting me into your class, and Leanne's students for talking with me about your work. Matthew Moore, thank you so much for the interview. Drew and Maggie for the hosting, Maggie for inviting me into your class and teaching my work, which is just such a great honor. Susan, thank you so much for your work with Mina Loy and bringing her into the world in the way that you've done with navigating the avant-garde, the Mina Loy website that you co-created, and all your work with her. vast body of work, and now with Elizabeth Bishop. What lucky ladies. What lucky ladies. Also, I'm very touched to be the Diann Blakely visiting writer. The University of Georgia Press Poetry Series, which she was published in, was really formative for me as a poet. It's such a fantastic series. And also, Elixir Press was really important to me. Elixir also had a journal, and that was one of the first places that I was published. And I was so proud and happy to be part of that family, and to be here via her is just such a great honor. So what I plan to do tonight is I've made you a reading that features some of the Mina Loy work, which is my most recent work. So I'll read just a little bit from her own writing, Lost Writings, which I edited. I'll read from my poet's novel, Transcendental Factory, and then I'll end with some lyric poems from a book called Isolation Songs that will come out in a few years, that I started working on when I was engaging with Mina Loy's writing. So to set the stage, so some of you are Loy experts, but I wanted to open with the way I like to introduce Loy, which is a quick biography. So born in a London suburb in 1882, Mina Loy succeeded in building a multifaceted, creative life in the face of her oppressive Victorian upbringing. The meager education allowed a woman of her time, divorce when this could ruin a woman, the loss of her beloved second husband, the death of 2 of her children, and the raising of 2 others. She sustained herself through 2 world wars, a global pandemic, a worldwide economic depression, continual personal economic precarity, and immigration as part of the wave of refugees fleeing fascism in Europe. That is to say, Mina Loy persisted, created, and thrived within the ongoing wreckage wrought by systems that nearly a century later show no sign of abating. So my work with both her manuscripts and Transcendental Factory, and to some extent the poems in Isolation Songs, are love letters to her and to others like you who sustain a life in art and by extension make life possible. So I'll read just a couple paragraphs from one of her books. So Lost Writings publishes 2 novels that she was working on during her lifetime that weren't published. She tried to get them published, but that didn't happen for her. One was written in the 30s when she was living in Paris. Probably, they're not dated, so this is archival speculation. And then the other was written in New York City, probably after she immigrated in 1936. I love the novels. They're deeply philosophical, they're lyrical. This is the end, or what passes as the end for the first novel. The chapter is called Being Alive, and it's also called Interlude. So I'll read the first page of this last chapter. This is Mina Loy. Being alive gives us the sensation of using an infinitesimal amount of an infinite potentiality, of having an incalculable force driving through us into blocked up channels, of being a semi-paralyzed Hercules. It gives us the impression of being the witness of our own experience, of witnessing that witness, and of witnessing that witnessing, until there is no end to the multiplication of the witnessed witness within us. Sentinel of that mysterious reservoir of consciousness, there is no point at which we come to halt and declare, "Here my being of consciousness begins." Thus, we are never entirely taken up by our events, there being always something of us left aloof from them. Being alive is a walling in by our blind back, a convenient housing of our biological perceptions, for otherwise, who can tell but that we might be looking out of front and back windows all at once? Being alive is the loneliness of the multitude, similar in their helpless, parasitic lascivity distinct as each one crying alone and forever, I. That individuality which, like a filed, viable explosive, is conditioned by each man having as label a face which he alone among his fellows can never see, even as he has to compose his own psyche with the experiences of the human race. He exists to the extent of the general understanding of him, unless he can make a personal contribution to add to this human experience of which he is composed. He has no concrete proof of being other than a soft machine that moves in a landscape, and thus we see him when looking from long distance, where he first appears as a pale creature stirring against a wall of green, and later as a clothed creature surrounded by erected stone. But taken from close up, he forms a covered entrance to infinity. It is for this reason his strange intuition of the illimitable presence of himself survives an experience that should, by dint of repetition, minimize him. In such calculated flux of similars does nature spawn him, does the world receive him. So that is Mina Loy's intense lyrical philosophical prose. So I'll read to you Transcendental Factory for Mina Loy is an experimental biography and poet's novel. And it's organized by year. It's not chronological, so the years jump around. And I thought I would read to you some from 1936. So this is around the time that she was writing the first book of Lost Writings. She was also writing her poet's novel called Insel, which is German for island. And that novel was published in the 90s, so also not published while she was alive. And that book comes up in my writing. Okay, so this is 1936. Fabric cut on the bias at 45 degrees against the weave creates a fluid, body-skimming garment, flaring soft at the ankles and balanced by an exaggerated shoulder, as in the dress Joan Crawford wears in Letty Linton. Designed by Adrian, diaphanous white organdy with immense ruffled sleeves produces slimming at the hips, a satisfying line which by 1936 makes its way into the design of the suit and simple house dress. In addition to child-sized hips, ruffles fashion an aura of innocence, as if the decade's deepening economic depression and fascism don't exist. A material and ideological as if, underlying mass-produced patterns, 1,000-franc dress made up for less than 50. When Loy writes Insel's Mrs. Jones out the door for a dress fitting, does she mean she's been up all night sewing? The tailor's daughter floats up the stairs. The beruffled Letty Linton is most appropriate for the under 25 set, but the bias cut flatters both 20 and above, commanding the marketplace directly after Madeleine Vianney's first collection in 1907, shown without corsets or shoes. Born in 1876, by the age of 12, Vianney was apprenticed to a lace maker, then learned dressmaking from a tailor who specialized in spin-offs of French fashion for the English court. She developed not only the bias cut and Grecian drapery look, but also the honeycomb dress, the handkerchief dress, the hem-stitched blouse, the halter dress. An early innovator of pret-a-porter, Vianney introduced authenticated labels featuring her signature and the imprint of her right thumb. She shuttered her business at the onset of the Second World War, donating most of her designs to the Louvre's Musée de la Monde et du Textile. Vogue's photographer captures the undulating folds of Vianney's 1936 winged Victory of Samothrace inspired dress, as if its draping is swept by a celestial wind. The model poses on a slatted board covered in black fabric, gown pinned against the background. 21-year-old Julian Levy, fresh out of Harvard and eager, arrives in Paris in 1927 to make films, to play a little chess with Duchamp, to Les Dômes and Chez Bricktop. Without delay, he befriends Loy and falls in love with her 19-year-old daughter, Joella. They quickly marry and depart for Manhattan, where he works for his father's real estate business until his mother's death and subsequent inheritance affords a gallery on Madison Avenue in 1931. Famed for mounting New York City's first show of surrealism, in 1932, Levy's success and the movement of surrealist art across the Atlantic owe Loy a significant debt. Studio visits, gallery openings, Loy scouts, commissions, selects, and contracts work by Giorgio de Chirico, René Magritte, Richard Olds, Salvador Dali, and others, many of whom appear in her novel Insel. She also stores, crates, and ships pieces to the gallery, and if they return unsold, she delivers them back to the artists. Crucially, she ensures the artists are paid, often lobbying Levy to give the struggling a show, paying what the gallery owes out of her own small account, reimbursing herself when the money finally arrives. Her letters to Levy, held in his papers at the Philadelphia Museum of Art, reveal not only labor but investment, creative, intellectual, physical. A 1934 Dali returns damaged, and she gives it the touch-up that it needs. When a 1935 Dali comes back, she discovers that a piece of the lion's head which had been glued on had come off. The canvas also has a hole in the center, which within a week she repairs. No more boning, no more rubber, no more elastic suturing the real to the surreal, to the irreal, to the infrareal. By 1936, home, if ever Loy would call any place home, is an apartment in Juna Barnes's building at 9 Rue Saint-Roman, where she and her younger daughter, Fabi, have moved so as to be less lonely after Joella's departure, so as to own something against future's increasing insecurity. Oh, light-flooded entrance hall furnished with flea market metal dining room chairs, painted lemon, sky, petal, scuffed parquet floors, tall ceilings, milk glass chandeliers. Google Maps walking Rue Saint-Roman and Montparnasse, it's all ashlar facing until number 9, brick-clad above the ground floor and beveling around a courtyard fronted by a wrought iron fence. 6 stories of French doors with balconies fitted out with planter boxes commune companionably. Date stamped May 2019. The geraniums begin to bloom. It's an 11-minute walk to Gertrude Stein's, 23 to Natalie Barney's, Le Dôme, La Rotonde, Le Select, La Coupole, and Hotel Lutetia, just 11. The arrondissement on a Sunday is pristine, shuttered, quiet, the only human presence, a blurred figure searching for an open internet cafe, an eternal present until the data change. MillersAgents.com allows entrance into a number 9 unit renovated to accommodate 21st century convenience while losing none of its honeyed herringbone parquet, high ceilings, white walls, and crown moldings. Voile drapes open, French doors open to reveal the bright gash of geraniums. The price exceeds €1 million. In 1936, Mina steps onto her balcony, and across the courtyard, Juna Barnes appears. I stand at the open French doors to catch a small breeze. Hemmed with white tassels and silver bells, the curtains jangle, feathery. The apartment's an island, the private island of writing equipped with a private dock, private landing strip, all access points patrolled by a private security force. Not even I know what's tucked in this inner recess, deepest recess, labyrinth leading to bosom, sacred heart, solar plexus, guts. In 1936, silver paper arranged in floral patterns across the walls conceals crumbled plaster. Squares of colored cellophane cover the sitting room's glass doors, and light splays from the chandelier above a small round table. Plinth for the piece called Lobster Boy, circa 1930, floating in a bell jar. A humanoid figure with breasts, lobster tail instead of legs, claws in place of arms. My eyes burn like two dark coals. A garland of wire roses tightens around my brow as I look out from the aquarium. Submerged, where does the mind end and the book begin? Where does skin end and water begin? Amniotic floating, I meet Dora Maar, Merritt Oppenheim, and Pablo Picasso at the back of the Café du Fleur. Mirrors and mahogany paneling multiply Picasso's Breton jersey and Oppenheim in liquid gold. Vacances, a 1936 green floral perfume by Jean Patou, conjures the flowers, fruit, and grass of the first paid holidays in France, courtesy of the newly elected Popular Front. Maar caresses the oscillate fur that wraps the brass tubing Oppenheim has converted into a bracelet. Picasso murmurs in French, "You can cover anything with fur," as Oppenheim holds her teacup up to the waiter. She thinks in German, "More fur, please," but says in French, "More fur," and he fills her cup with a bow. Maar brushes the blonde wave of her hair from her eyes. A painting might not evoke the sensation of fur, but a photograph can. Yes, it can. Yes, it can. Furred, but don't touch. With a continuous gesture, Oppenheim rests cup to saucer and departs for the Uniprix department store to purchase the demi-tasse and spoon she'll cover with the fur of a Chinese gazelle. As Oppenheim pastes fur to bone china, she cries. Not big, stuttering gulps of air cries, but you wouldn't have known she was crying but for the perfect single crystal droplet slowing down her cheek cries. She cries not on behalf of herself, but on behalf of her father, barred in Germany from practicing psychoanalysis by the 1935 Nuremberg race laws, no longer able to send to Paris her usual monthly sum. The modern woman had been a sleek machine, but by 1936, she's disassembled into a Baroque framed mirror held by a statue's severed hand, reflecting a blank sky, a full moon. Then the same mirror, held by a woman's hand, reveals a blonde bombshell in a white scalloped dress. Hair caressed with pomade, she lifts a mask painted with her own features. Plucked brows, Revlon mouth, tongue furred. In 1936, the last Tasmanian tiger dies in Tasmania's Beaumarais Zoo. Hitler occupies the Rhineland in direct violation of the Treaty of Versailles, and the Gestapo is placed above the law. Germany hosts the Winter and Summer Olympics, and the Roma, the homeless, and other undesirables are sent to concentration camps guarded by the newly formed SS Totenkopf Death's Head Division. Jesse Owens wins 4 gold medals. In 1936, Italy annexed Ethiopia and proclaims the King of Italy its emperor. Upon the capture of Addis Ababa, Ildus announces the foundation of the new Roman Empire. In 1936, the Spanish Civil War begins. The poet Federico Garcia Lorca is arrested in Granada and shot by a firing squad. The Queen Mary begins Atlantic crossings and is nicknamed the Ship of Woods for its marqueterie, carvings, and murals done in 56 veneers, one for each protectorate of the British Empire. 6 of these woods are now extinct, a fact I don't know when I am 16 and perform Anna Pavlova's Dying Swan in its rented-out ballroom, ship permanently moored in Southern California since 1967. In 1936, Eva Hesse, Carolee Schneemann, Mary Tyler Moore, and Robert Redford are born. Rudyard Kipling, Maxim Gorky, and Ivan Pavlov die. Sunscreen, the helicopter, and the Zippo lighter are invented, and Jacques Lacan makes his first presentation of his theory of the mirror stage. In the US, unemployment nears 17%, and there are over 2,000 strikes, mainly in the textile, construction, and transportation industry. A November 1936 Harper's Bazaar article claims, "This year is the Surrealists' year," interviewing Julian Levy because nobody in America knows more about surrealism than he does. By corpse, Mina says through the apartment's dusk as she bends over the typewriter, we mean both flesh and context, the body of the dead, my beloved Colossus, my son Giles, my daughter Oda Janet, my father, my mother, our own mortal form, as well as the constellation of forces that hold the body to the living. Just as a cube in the 0th dimension manifests as a single point, the 3rd dimension traces just one single aspect. Loy channels a greater reality through Insel, the character she models after the German expressionist Richard Olds, and who paints the work Expectation in 1935, acquired via Loy by Levy the following year, and purchased by the Museum of Modern Art in 1940. In blues and greens and browns and grays, a crowd of men and a few women stand with their backs to the viewer. They face into the distance under a punishing sky. Insel, German for island, in early drafts was named Totenkopf, skull and bones. Mrs. Jones, like Loy, is an expatriate writer, artist, and the Paris agent for an American art gallery. Upon meeting Insel, she's captivated by his straw line, magnetic connectivity that alters the atmosphere, heals the lightning hand of pain. Truth body, astral body, dharmakaya, vibration body, whatever one in the 3rd dimension is partial. Loy writes to Levy of sitting outside at the Hotel Letitia's cafe with Man Ray and Olds. As air raid sirens roar, she's overwhelmed by a strong feeling that some effort should be made on Olds' behalf. Can Levy ask Alfred Barr to find someone to sponsor his immigration to America? The volcano is about to erupt. Straulen enthralls, Straulen enthralls, Straulen enthralls, Mrs. Jones' body, Insel's body, the body of Loy's book, metamorphoses into a balloon. The arms are 2 ribbons of electricity. The rib cage is the Eiffel Tower, and flowing from the womb, the Seine. Factories puff away on the riverbank, and the heart is a wandering Chinese gazelle, amazed she still exists, bereft as she is of her pelt. To starve until becoming nothing more than straw line prisming the wall. This body dispersed contrasts with the unified body proposed by Olympia, Leni Riefenstahl's documentary film of the 1936 Olympic Summer Games. Her camera sweeps across ruins on the Acropolis, then slows over several ancient sculptures until finding the Discobolus by Miron. Nude, the sculpture glistens and then dissolves. In its place stands Erwin Huber, fulfilling Hitler's idea, quick as a greyhound, tough as leather, hard as Krupp steel. Restless, Loy foresees a young Discobolus reclining on her bed. He effaces the slight depression left where Insel had been sleeping. It is then she knows. German tanks will parade down the Champs-Élysées as troops scale the Eiffel Tower in a war exercise. The premonition of the soldier, a mere boy, has been delivered by the plaster ceiling's cracks. Given Hitler's expanding power, Loy sends Fabi to live with Joella and Julian, and in 1936 sells her apartment at a loss, moving to New York City, never to see Europe again. The self is a decomposition of the whole, the composite origin of our experience, Loy scrawls on a scrap of paper. Let us meditate on the nature of our experience. In 1936, magazines report that for your coat, the newest fabric looks harsh and rough to the eye, but has a pleasantly soft texture. I therefore make up my face to look harsh to the eye, but wear my satin chemise. The exterior comes in the conventional black or blue and in marvelous neutral mixtures. It's the old ensemble idea again, nostalgic filter. We've already said our goodbyes. According to Loy's biography, when she arrives in New York in 1936, she looks much older than her 54 years. Late at night, I care less about the melting clocks than about the poor biomorphic form, part profile, part sea creature, long lashes insinuating the tenderness of pincushions and dreams. Moons, comets, teasing a butterfly, coronets, dawn, the bewitched, light, stars, stars, stars. And I'll stop there with this one. And I'll read to you just a few poems from Isolation Songs. I pulled some that feature some of the modernists, many of them women, some not. So you might hear Man Ray, Andre Breton, Joseph Cornell, also Lee Miller, Jacqueline Lamba, and the surrealist aqueous figure Londine. So thank you so much for listening. They don't have titles and they're all 10 lines long. You have to make some decisions, right? I practice differentiation by placing the lion in her cage. In its terrarium, the bromelade. Not mine, I pulse through glass, then trees, then sky for airship vision of the stadium. Team 1 and Team 2 at Fusillade. I stitched your undergarments with tulips to ensure a warrior's passage as instructions for destruction escort Man Ray's metronome, Lee Miller's eye paper-clipped to the pendulum. Touch of silk, of blood, what image gives the impression not of itself disappearing? I am I, am I, am I, I am I, I am I, and drought covers the land. If sun expands, excavating torsion's how-to mechanism, this longing for fashion persists. Nosegay, blood-spattered, fingertips initialing dusty glass, protecting chalky portraits. My face under a Gainsborough hat proclaims, when havoc breaks, let's watch from the cliff. Let's complete the treaties on absolute dark. The idea of a face versus an actual face produces Mina Loy from Mina Loy, starlit from artist, object from absence. This sounds after the sun, the IU division erased. What's self-recognition but mannerism? Plastic cubes prove jewels when set in a velvet-lined box. Fettered to desire for unfettering, rim, orifice, and cuts on a body surface mark thresholds where the world enters with autocratic love, while the mouth kisses itself, speaking the blue and the wind, the camera's lens, through which I'm Aqua Musical's $1 Million Mermaid, executing dream sequences of underwater kicks. Instead of talk, I hold my breath and outside the aquarium rub rue, onion, civet, and chopped garter snake into ancestral wounds, my bird shirt decorated with pigeons' pinions. If to be is to be seen, I persist in floating long after they drain the pool. Since I can't spill blood, I'll spill milk. Does the pugilist also train his gun on you, or does he reserve that gesture for our unique love? I'd gladly leave him at desert's edge, where generosity to vultures fuses flesh to dress, and I'm a hyena crossed with floral bodice. Hold me close. André Breton's "If You Leave Me, I Will Destroy You" means Jacqueline Lamba's pre-war paintings never were recovered. In exchange for a Prinsengracht flat, the color-broken bulb had promised no more than a single flame-tipped tulip. Only by change in temperature does the body recognize water from air. In exchange for amnesty of sacrificial bull, sister promises will swim nude, aquarium girls gliding past suited diners, nothing Jacqueline Lamba didn't do. We rise to the surface via breasts, neck, head, then toweling off to leather-clad on Vespas. I'll spill back home display case monarchs, crumbling into dust that shifts across terrariums, fern, and spider. The latest cure suggests ingesting crushed quartz mixed with scat. A lazy picnic afternoon unfolds as aqueous pirouette completes its turn. Voila, la femme becomes her bull, wandering into traffic. Je suis Landine, playing mirror games with aquarium glass. Sub the rosa of any complexion run netted veins, cobalt betas circling in and out the castle. You, in work boots and crocheted sweater, rake magnolia petals. Close-cropped hair of winter's child, antlers, roses woven, I crave your indistinguishable gender. In each night's cat's rehearsal, I penché in vinyl trash bag shorts, not unlike those father's mother wore for electroshock. This windless afternoon grants fountains monopoly over motion. Worrying this small laceration with my tongue, and therefore via Freud's labyrinth to Benjamin's arcade and evening gown and little moon mirror choker, earrings, wristless cuffs. I glint the dark, not tragedy but tower spiel, funeral pageant, carnival, turn of the wheel. To have been an island, to have been continually occupied, to throw the clock into the sea, then the wallet, iPhone. I want a fast boat, a swift wind, then disembark to a sleek black car rocketing back to the desert. I occupy the stage's pool of light, chiffon suddenly transparent, berry brought to lips, juice staining hands on bodice on hips. I mime walking a quiet shore until a drowned deer, requiem of thunder. Love me from the orchestra pit. Love me, sweet ideological cause I pretend no longer exists. Leatherette briefcase clasped to my breast. Here we tell time by festival and midnight harvesting's outrageous machine. Thank you.